welcome to The Truth About Cancer, a Global Quest. I'm so thankful that you've tuned in for this show. Now, just in case you missed the last show, here's a recap for you. Here's a summary of what you've come to understand during this episode. You've seen the heartbreaking truth behind why cancer is so rapidly spreading and why the false cures have been perpetuated. I hope this side of the history equation has helped you understand the foundation for why things are the way they are. You've seen the shocking decisions concerning the Nuremberg trials, where the vilest of crimes were praised, and that evil intent opened a floodgate of deception that led to the creation of a system that sought not to eradicate disease, but rather amplify it through disseminating false solutions for the sake of perpetual monetary gain. You've seen the doctors who, rather than being praised or awarded for their heroic deeds in healing their patients, have been persecuted, slandered, threatened, and in some cases have even had their patient records destroyed, their practice shut down, they've been imprisoned, even run out of the country, and have had their families undergo harassment and heartache for their loyalty to the cause. You've seen the children that have been forced chemotherapy against their wishes and their parents' wishes, regardless of their level of expertise or the effectiveness of their desired natural, proven protocol. You've seen the proof that corruption, greed, coercion, deception, and fear have been tools employed to create a system that leaves people confused and afraid rather than empowered. The great news today is that we have won the battle in your life, as you have discovered the truth, and as it said, the truth will set you free. I'm so happy that you've experienced this and that through you, your loved ones too will know the truth about cancer. I know you felt the hope and courage in the stories of the survivors that have recovered taking a natural approach, achieving feats unheard of by conventional methods of treatment. Isn't it wonderful to see real-life proof? It warms my heart to see lives restored. I hope that you've enjoyed learning these things, and while they may be difficult to hear, it does bring us to the central truth that cancer is in fact not a death sentence. In light of this truth that we have established, you can give yourself one of the greatest gifts in this moment, and that is the peace that results when you are free from fear. You do not have to live in fear. You can prevent and beat cancer. In this episode, we are going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to travel to Australia and get some survivor stories and some treatment protocols currently being used there. We're going to learn a little bit about hormones. We're going to dive into essential oils, and we're going to tackle a biggie, breast cancer. Now, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and there are a lot of lies and deceptions associated with breast cancer. We're going to try to get to the truth. But first of all, we're going to take a step back. We're going to answer the question, what is cancer and why does it spread? What exactly is cancer?
So basically, cancer is abnormal growth of cell. And basically, they lose the apoptosis, programmed cell death. They don't die, they become immortal. And your body's immune system usually take care of the abnormal cell in your body. We do all have about 10 to 100,000 abnormal cells every day. But our immune system's job is to get rid of those cells if your immune system is perfect. If you don't have virus that is already trying to fight. If you don't have too much chemical or other stuff going on in your body. So then they keep growing and growing, increasing in number, and then you get a tumor.
And so the tumor really is a result of a lot of years of things going wrong.
Suppression of immune system, exactly.
Cancer is a condition where some cells in the body are no longer responding to the signals that tell them when to quit. In other words, most cells that have a purpose for developing, they develop to a certain point and then they stop. Cancer cells keep reproducing, so they keep growing and they can spread to other places. That's what's called a metastasis. So cancer cells have escaped the normal controls for regulation of how big a bunch of cells is supposed to become.
Cancer is a process that occurs in our body all the time. So as we are sitting and talking, there are cancer cells that are constantly created in our body. They do not always lead to the development of cancer because our immune system finds them as abnormal cells and eliminates them. And cancer cell is a cell that escaped biological control that is to which all normal cells in our body are subjected. So cancer cells divides indefinitely. And also cancer cells are immortal. They never die because the genetic program that regulates life and death cycle in those cells has been damaged. And cancer cells also have another ability. They are not happy in sitting in one spot in our body. They invade our organs, and also they metastasize, which means that they escape to other organs. And metastasis is the most dangerous process of cancer, because 9 out of 10 patients die of metastasis, not of primary cancer.
So cancer results from a failure of the immune system, and the majority of cancer patients do not die from the primary tumor. They die from the spreading or the metastasis of cancer. So it seems like we should be focusing on how to stop the cancer from spreading, doesn't it? If our army wants to stop the invasion of foreign troops, it must be able to communicate with each other. Otherwise, we can't stop the invasion. The same goes for our own personal army, the immune system. If our immune cells cannot communicate, we cannot stop the invasion of cancer.
Cancer, by nature of the thing, is the major breakdown in systemic communication. So what happens with the cancer, as you probably know, the body just does not see the growing tissue. We all grow little cancers in our bodies many times a year, maybe sometimes once a day. However, this growth is always controlled by the general regulation and management system of the body. The body is computerized. So when the communication is running correctly and our lines of communication are open, then the body detects that growth on an early stage and suppresses it. However, when the lines are broken, that's when happens that the body does not see the developing tissue until it is too late. If the body is not aware of the growing tissue, if the communication is broken, burning the cancer out of the body is not going to help, because if it's burned in one place, it will come up somewhere else.
Because the communication hasn't been fixed. Of course,
and you probably met many cancer survivors or sufferers who had cancer several times. Treated conventionally, it will come up somewhere else because it is a systemic thing.
Cancer is a failure of the body's own cells to communicate with each other properly. Genetics plus intercellular communication. Cancer is the mal-expression or the inappropriate expression of your DNA. It is not something that has invaded you from the outside, so you cannot look at cancer with the paradigm of carpet bombing your body, declaring war on an invader. It's not an invader. It's something internally that is not communicating correctly at a cellular level. So you need to become whole, you need to heal, not destroy, in order to overcome cancer. Now there may be extreme cases where there's a tumor that's so large that it's pressing on an artery or a nerve or something like that, where it has to be physically removed. I understand that. I'm not saying surgery doesn't have any place at all. It can have its place. But even then, the surgery is only a temporary solution. You still have to address what has led to that tumor in the first place.
The present orthodox view is that cancer is a lump or a bump. That's the cancer. And if that's the assumption. Now, if that is true, then to get rid of cancer, all you have to do is get rid of the lump or the bump. And hence we have surgery. Well, that gets rid of the lump or the bump. Or we have chemotherapy, which poisons the lump or the bump. So we got rid of it. Or we have radiation, which burns it and got rid of it. And you undergo these 3 therapies, and if you get rid of the lump or the bump, the doctor will say, it looks like we got it all. That famous line, we got it all, But did they? No, the statistics show that in most cases it comes back. They didn't get it all because that was never the cancer in the first place, If you're a farmer and you see all these little black spots on your corn leaves, and you think, well, those are black spots, that's the disease, and you get the scissors out and you cut all the black spots away, Well, you said, we got it all, right? No, you didn't, because that wasn't the disease. What caused those black spots is still present.
There are so many things that cause cancer. Number one, you'll never have an oncologist ask, well, what caused this? And let's get rid of what caused it. You'll never hear that question they only have one thing, and that is kill cancer cells. Well, what caused the cancer cells? Why did this occur in the body? Obviously, the immune system was suppressed, so are we going to unsuppress the immune system? Are we going to stimulate the immune system back into action? Are we going to lower nagalase counts from viruses and cancer cells so that the body's own defenses, macrophage activating factor, can work? So there are many things to do other than just give a poison to the body to kill cancer cells. We have to orchestrate healing here.
And I think one of the main thing is the viruses. We do see a lot of different kind of viruses in patients with cancer. Not only HPV, herpes, you see mono, Epstein-Barr virus. I have a handful of patients with breast cancer who have parasites. When they do coffee enema, garlic enema, they actually see the worms coming out.
Wow.
And what does parasite do to your body? It suppresses the immune system. So there is some doctors who believe you develop cancer because of the parasite. Some believe candida, the fungus, yeast, but I think everything has to do with it.
We start to look at some other numbers. 18% of all cancers are caused by infection. No one talks about that.
18%.
18%. 23% of all cancers are related to obesity. No one ever talks about that because obesity is running amok right now. This year, overweight and obesity in the US alone will hit 75%, with 41% being obese. And they've already doctored the numbers, the body mass index, for declaration of that. Then we look at the other environmental factors, and they lump that into 41% of all cancers are due to environmental factors. So then we're looking at an unknown 18%. And this 18% that we're looking at, it could be genetic. Genetic's small, 5 to 10%. Just other factors, whether it's ambient environmental radiation, non-ionizing, unlikely it's ionizing, but that can all be lumped in there into these same factors.
Is there a link between obesity and cancer?
Well, I think it goes.
You mentioned the insulin resistance.
I think
as well.
it goes back to insulin resistance. There are some studies that show a correlation. The correlation, of course, is not causation. But so the central roles of whatever contributes to obesity most likely contributes to other diseases. And it could be all the other chronic degenerative diseases like heart disease and Alzheimer's and diabetes. So cancer is just one of those. That's exactly what you'd expect when you're not giving your body what it needs. But insulin resistance is the core, absolutely the core. And I've known this for 20 years. I'm grateful to Dr. Ron Rosedale, who's a physician who taught me and helped me appreciate and understand that. And that really has been one of the primary focuses of the way I've treated patients is to understand strategies to address insulin resistance. And there's no question in my mind the single most effective intervention I've ever seen to address insulin resistance is intermittent fasting, with the right foods ideally. But that intermittent fasting, and you might say, well, I've got to eat every 2 hours, otherwise I'll pass out, I'll go no energy. And yes, that's what happens because your body is used to that sugar high and you can't burn fat. But once you make that transition, it literally is nothing short of magical. Your body is not hungry anymore. It just isn't hungry. We were never designed to sit down all day long. This is another problem. When you're sitting down, it causes massive challenges in your system, which was never designed to do. We were never designed to sit for 8 or 10 hours a day. So that's why I think it's really good to get up and walk, a few miles a day, 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day or more, in addition to an exercise program. So it's not just exercise, it's movement. That's so critical. And it doesn't have to be walking, just as long as you're moving. We need regular movement throughout the day, not just 1 hour a day at the gym.
Well, that's great information from Dr. Mercola on obesity and the link that it has to cancer. Now, infections, parasites, viruses, fungi, environmental toxins, these all are some of the causes of cancer. Why? Because they compromise the immune system. Again, the immune system is key. But what about genetics? Isn't genetics the main cause of cancer? You got bad genes, right? It's just bum luck. That's what many oncologists would tell you. But the fact of the matter is that's not true. Dr. Fisher didn't just pull that 5% statistic out of midair. He actually got it from the American Cancer Society's very own website. Speaking of genetics, we've all heard stories about people that have the BRCA gene and they're afraid that they're going to get breast cancer because of this. Angelina Jolie is a prime example. But was she misled? Was she misled by oncologists that told her that her only hope to avoid breast cancer was to remove both breasts? Did she choose this treatment because of a fear factor?
That's completely fear-based, and it's also because the media hypes that up, especially if a famous person like Angelina Jolie has a double mastectomy. But the kind of cancer that she had is less than 5% of all women with breast cancers. And so to remove your breast is, I think, barbaric. It's really barbaric. Epigenetics, if people don't know what that means that something will act upon your genes. So your genetics, like your software, something has to open it up and read it. And so you could have a toxic chemical in the environment that opens up some cancer genes and turns them on, but we could also turn those off with plant medicine. That's much more powerful than just trying to kill cancer cells.
Right.
Doctors would like you to believe that cancer is genetic, that we've got genetic abnormalities, and cancer rises from a genetic predisposition or a break in your DNA or whatever it might be, but it's not true, and it's actually been proven that it's not true. And doctors should in fact know this, but they don't. Let's say that your body and your genetics is the computer, that's the hardware. People can understand this. The epigenetics is the software. The software runs the hardware. We know that from computers. We don't seem to understand that with the human body. So what we need to do is not dwell upon the genetics, but the epigenetics. In other words, what works that computer? If the software is working, generally the hardware is working.
So our last question. You wrote a book called What Angelina Should Have Known and Didn't Know. So what should she have known?
I feel very sorry for her because she has removed healthy breast. Can you imagine, Ty? You remove your manhood, your healthy manhood, because of fear. It's crazy. But she thought this is the only way for prevention. But there's another way for prevention, because she should have known that our genes do not control life. You can activate genes and deactivate. And if we deactivate our genes with our healthy lifestyle, we do not get cancer. That's what she should have known.
It's not so much that we're born with this gene that's going to give us breast cancer. It's that our epigenetic, our environmental influences, the food we eat, the exercise we do or don't do, the toxic exposure, turn those genes on or off. So you don't have to worry about these inherited genes that may cause you to do a prophylactic double mastectomy. That's just insanity from my perspective, and it's an irrational fear. If you appreciate and fully understand the amazing regenerative capacity our body has, if it's given the proper tools.
One of the major problems that we have in terms of our old understanding of genetics is that people believed if they were born, say, as a woman with a BRCA gene that might increase their risk of breast cancer, they have not been told, and certainly wouldn't expect to hear from their doctor, that the way they live their life will alter the expression of those genes and their risk of cancer.
The BRCA gene scare, it really was quite a Hollywood hype, last year. And I'm not judging her. I mean, she saw her mother die a very horrible death. But there was a lot of misinformation. The BRCA genes are actually cancer protective genes. They help to repair DNA damage. And so the BRCA gene, if it mutates, then it can cause a problem possibly, but what causes it to mutate? Look at the foods, look at the radiation. So BRCA genes are tumor suppressor protective genes.
So do you inherit breast cancer? Or breast cancer genes that are, is it inherited? Is it genetic?
That's the big thing. Well, my mother had breast cancer, so I'm probably going to have breast cancer. But we now know through the study of epigenetics, which is the science of looking at gene expression, and nutrigenomics, which is the study of food, we know that we can change our gene expression by what we eat, how we sleep or don't sleep, how we manage or don't manage our stress, the foods that we eat. So something as simple as curcumin can help to really turn on the cancer protective genes and change those gene expressions.
Wow, I bet you've never heard that before, that the BRCA gene can actually protect you from breast cancer. It does not necessarily cause breast cancer. Now, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Think Pink, Run for the Cure. You see all of these different campaigns that are aimed at bringing awareness to breast cancer, which is not necessarily a bad thing. We want to bring awareness to cancer as well. However, let's look at the history of Breast Cancer Awareness Month through the eyes of Erin Elizabeth.
Yeah, so it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and it's interesting how the whole story started with the pink ribbon that you were mentioning. Actually, it used to be a peach ribbon, and it was a woman named Charlotte Haley who had started that grassroots movement. And her whole objective was to get the word out that so little money was spent on prevention, first of all, not just research, but with prevention. And that's still the case today. And even with research, not much of the money that they'll raise during the month of October is really even spent in research because so much overhead. So yeah, it's a real shame. But what most people don't know is back in '92, this little old lady just started a grassroots movement with her peach ribbons, which she was giving out to people. She'd give out 5 at a time with a little note, and it really took off, where she wanted people to be aware, not so much of just breast cancer itself, but of preventing breast cancer in the first place. And then Estee Lauder and Self magazine came along, and they wanted to use her ribbon. And I think they were shocked when she said, no, I'm not going to support these corporations turning my grassroots movement into this thing that really became more about making money. So, and today, even when I was doing some research on it, when I'll try to find her name in pink ribbons, you keep getting these Estee Lauder ads selling their expensive, now they've got, I don't know if they're diamond encrusted, ribbons you can buy. It really seems like it's been exploited. It's ironic that you have Susan G. Komen or Estee Lauder or Kentucky Fried Chicken, Susan G. Komen doing joint ventures with them with the pink ribbon, which it really boils down to that these corporations that are not really healthy are, it's a bit hypocritical that they're trying to be out there selling the pink ribbon and saying they're all about curing breast cancer.
We go around and celebrate wearing pink socks and pink ribbons and buying pink lemonade on an airline to contribute to cancer. It sure does. It's ridiculous. I coach youth sports. I won't wear pink. I won't put pink on. I don't believe in that. Why? Because the pharmaceutical intervention, conventional methods are not saving lives.
So now we're going to end the war on cancer. So we're going to get everybody involved. We're going to get them to run for it. We're going to get them to jump for it. We're going to get them to pray for it. We're going to get them to beg for it. So now everybody, you can't go anywhere without giving money I can't buy groceries without somebody wanting money from me.
With all the money that we're pouring into Relay for Life, the Komen, really hasn't helped change things for the patients.
And so you saw that firsthand as an oncology nurse for 17 years.
I did.
It's not on the camera, but you got some really neon pink tennis shoes on. But what about the pink movement, right? The breast cancer pink movement. What's your take on the October Get Your Mammograms?
Well, its focus is on breast cancer awareness instead of breast health awareness, and the pink movement has really caused so much fear and so much misinformation when it comes to breast cancer in women. And there's so many myths involving breast cancer.
Dr. V just mentioned breast cancer myths. During Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we always hear early detection is your best protection. And everyone knows that for breast cancer, mammograms are the best way to early detect. Or is this a myth?
There's been at least 2 studies, very large, that have come out on the limitations of mammography. One of them was a Canadian study, I believe it was 20 or 25 years that they've watched in the past, that found no benefit. Also the Lancet, which is a large British journal, equivalent to our Journal of American Medical Association, or JAMA, came out and said that there's really no benefit at all to doing, and possibly some harm. The harm being it is ionizing radiation, which we know isn't the best for us.
Right.
And also, again, with the pancake smasher, if you do have a cancer and you smash that wall that the body's put around it, are you spreading the disease that way?
Right.
I don't know, but I don't want to find out.
Well, yeah, and that's the Lancet, right? That's pretty reputable.
Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty reputable. And also the BMJ, the British Medical Journal, I believe, did a write-up as well. So that's 2 or 3 very reputable, internationally published.
Early detection just means early death, because the earlier they find it, the earlier they start cutting you, the earlier they start treating you with chemotherapy and radiation, and the earlier you die. Breast cancer grows 7 to 12 years to a size in the breast that you can even diagnose it. So there is no rush. You know, they find breast cancer, oh, you have to go and get surgery tomorrow morning.
A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure, because they don't want you to get basically the time to get educated and educate yourself. So let's talk about this early detection. Imagine your lymph system, you have 4 times more lymph liquid than blood. So your lymph system, your lymph nodes are there to neutralize poison. It's like when you have a tonsillitis, they are the big lymph nodes, and then they're just working hard. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, showing, oh, the tonsils caught all these poisons, and basically they're just diluting it and neutralizing it and then getting rid of it. So when you have that tie, and imagine like a pimple that's ready to burst. Now the lymph node in the breast might be working hard and being inflamed, and it looks like a pimple that's getting to burst, ready to burst. So now they put 50 pounds of pressure on it.
That makes sure it bursts.
That makes sure it bursts.
We, as a medical society, are giving women breast cancer with our demanding that they get mammograms. Mammograms cause breast cancer, period. So mammograms are not healthy for women. Women should not be getting routine mammograms. That's crystal clear, published in the peer-reviewed literature. And yet today, if a woman went to her gynecologist or family doc, she would have this shoved down her throat, extreme coercion to go get this mammogram that's causing breast cancer.
Wow, what a telling quote from Dr. Ben Johnson, that mammograms are actually causing cancer. Now, in that respect, I guess they're sort of similar to chemotherapy, because chemotherapy actually causes cancer. In last night's episode, we learned the story about Dr. Farid Fatah that was diagnosing people with cancer that didn't even have cancer and then prescribing chemotherapy. I guess you could say he was overdiagnosing them. What about mammograms? Is mammography prone to diagnose women with breast cancer that don't even have breast cancer? Are we being told the whole truth about this issue?
There's been a manipulation of the science, and there's been a very dangerous thing called overdiagnosis that has really afflicted millions of women over the past 30 years, especially for breast cancer. Because what they've done is that they convinced women that if they were to basically subscribe to an X-ray mammography screening, even though they have no symptoms, that ultimately that would help them in the long run. They'd have a lower risk of cancer because they'd find it early.
Early detection is your best protection.
Exactly. They even equated this meme with prevention, when in fact you're exposing your breast to a type of radiation that is actually known to have a higher risk of causing cancer in the breast, especially if you have the BRCA1 and 2 gene mutations that everyone is so concerned about, because they make it harder for you to to protect yourself from radiation-induced damage. So overdiagnosis, according to a recent study done in the New England Journal of Medicine, over the past 30 years in the United States resulted in 1.3 million women being diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer that technically never had any type of cancer that would have caused harm. This is called ductal carcinoma in situ, or stage 0 cancer, which they equated with actual cancer, which now we know is not. And so what that basically meant is that they would give them the standard mastectomy or lumpectomy with radiation, with chemotherapy, things like tamoxifen, and then follow up hormone suppressive therapies like Arimidex. So basically what we're dealing with here is a kind of a medical holocaust of sorts, because those women now had to deal with being diagnosed with a cancer they didn't have, being treated for it, having the stigma and all the psycho-spiritual emotional stress that's caused by that. And then statistically, the industry told them that they saved their lives, when in fact quite the opposite had happened. So they identify with the aggressor like a Stockholm syndrome, and millions of people march in these breast cancer awareness marches, not realizing that it's funded by the very corporations that make money off the drugs used to treat breast cancer. We're talking about AstraZeneca, which actually is a derivative of Imperial Chemical Industries, who started Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the 80s and has a patent, or had the patent, for tamoxifen and Arimidex. So it's a vicious circle of brainwashing, and it's used to cover up really what has cost the lives, I think, of hundreds of thousands of women ultimately.
You know, my perception was not quite there when I was diagnosed the first and second time. But the third time, when I was told that I had about a year to live if I was unwilling to do the chemo, which I had been all along, and that the cancer would metastasize and maybe within a year there would be no hope for me, something that stirred something very deep inside of me, and I began to awaken. And it was not an easy journey. I still had my fears. I still had days where I felt like maybe it was easier to die than it was to live. I went through all of that, but all along, underneath all that was this guidance that I had never opened up to before, but I was beginning to follow. And that guidance, just step by step, day by day, it led me, and it saved my life.
But they said it was late stage,
yes,
and supposedly terminal. You had less than a year to live.
Yes. They thought they could maybe give me 5 years. That was a maybe. But without it, they thought within a year, they were pretty sure it would metastasize and there would be nothing they could do. I was learning to trust that information and trust my body, that my body was giving me signals. Because when I asked about chemotherapy, Ty, I would get this sort of real deep clenching in my gut, sometimes almost painful. And then when I would say something like, because I didn't know what to do, I had no idea there was an alternative out there of any kind, I would say something like, if there was something out there better for me, would that be helpful? And that clenching would just completely release. And so I knew, even though I didn't know where to go and what to do, I knew I couldn't walk the path they were asking me.
You knew there must be a better way.
I did.
Wow, that's an encouraging story from Brenda Michaels, who healed her breast cancer naturally. And it's a stark contrast to a story that I saw recently on HBO. It was a documentary special on cancer, and a lady had been diagnosed with cancer in her left breast, and she had had it surgically removed. And you see her later in the show weeping. She's got a scar on her breast, and she says she looks like Frankenstein. And then she says, and now we're going to start radiation next week. I was so saddened for her because the lady did not know that she had options. She did not have the knowledge that you are gaining through watching the show. Much like Brenda Michaels, Dr. Veronique Desaulniers was aware of the options she had. Dr. Veronique was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she treated it and beat it.
You know, as a woman, it was so shocking for me because I was the one that was helping my patients get well and reversing all these various diseases in my practice. And so when I discovered that I had breast cancer, it was really a blow to my ego, for one, and it was also a big wake-up call for me. You know, I thought I had the world by the tail, and I realized that obviously if my body allowed the cancer to grow, there was something that I was missing. And so I had to really look at my life. I had to look how I was managing my stress. I had to look at, putting pieces of the puzzle together that obviously I had missed. So it really led me down a path of, soul searching and really digging deep. There were a lot of, tearful days, a lot of tearful nights, but like I tell my clients today, you have to transform the whole person. It's not just the physical lump or bump, but you have to heal the whole body, and that means heart, soul, mind, spirit, everything. Because if you keep doing the things you've always done, you're going to continue to get the same results. Why? Why and how? So if that could happen to somebody like me, who was doing so many things that were right, then how much more so could other women be vulnerable to this, dis-ease in their body? And just helping them to understand that it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's not, cancer is not the disease itself. It's just the tip of the iceberg that shows you that there's so many underlying things. Because you have to be sick in order to develop cancer. You don't get cancer and then you're sick. Your body's already sick and it's compromised. Your immune system's weak. You're toxic. You're stressed out. And that's how cancer develops. And, so it's displacing that myth and that fear that cancer is just something that gets you. It's something that develops over a period of time. And you're not a victim of it. You have a lot of control over it. So one of the reasons that I'm doing the work that I'm doing is because there's so much information out there, and where does one person start? Because, do I, detox first? Do I do this? Do I do that? What herbs do I take? So I developed a program. It's a 7-step program called the 7 Essentials, and it's so simple that anybody can apply it. So the first one is essential number 1. Let food be your medicine. We know that food has a huge impact on our genetic expression. We know that it can, literally turn on specific cancer protective genes. We know that through the science of epigenetics and nutrigenomics. Number 2 is to detox, reduce your toxic exposure. We live in a toxic world, we can't deny that, but there are things that you can do specifically to help support the detoxification pathways in your body and to prevent all the toxins from entering into your body. Essential number 3 is to balance your energy. We're energetic beings, and so what can you do to keep that electricity and that energy flowing properly? Chiropractic care, acupuncture, exercise, proper sleep, making sure that your hormones are balanced, because hormones are very key in so many hormone-driven cancers. Essential number 4 is to heal your emotional wounds. Learn to nurture yourself and to love yourself, to forgive yourself and others. Manage your stress better. Let go of the past, because those things, if you keep stuffing those emotions inside, are going to grow a tumor. You either grow your life or you grow a tumor. So you have to change that emotional component. Essential number 5 is to look at biological dentistry, because your teeth have a huge impact on your health. Your teeth are connected to your organs through your meridian system. What you have in your teeth affects your health, because if you have toxic amalgams in there, it's causing toxicity in the body. And then we look at essential number 6, which is, there are specific herbs and supplements and vitamins that can really reduce your toxic load, that can help heal the cancer, actually kill cancer cells, and boost your immune system. Okay, and lastly is essential number 7 in really practicing true prevention. Traditional medicine, unfortunately, does not really teach prevention and does not know about prevention. There are many, many ways and different technologies that can detect cancer when it's at the size of a pinhead, instead of waiting until it's the size of a lump or a bump that you can detect on an X-ray or on a mammogram. Thermography, for example, can read the physiological changes that are going on in the body. There are specific blood tests, like the Cancer Profile, which measures the HCG hormones, the PHI, which is a malignancy hormone, TK1 enzyme, the Oncoblot test, which can also determine, cancer when it's just the size of a pinhead in the body. That's true prevention. And so if you can stay on top of your health by monitoring and not just guessing about your health, but making sure that you're moving in the right direction, there's no reason to fear cancer.
I agree 100% with Dr. V. There is no reason to fear cancer. Now, she just shared with us what she calls her 7 essentials. The number 1 essential was let food be thy medicine. Number 2 is detox. Number 3 is balance your energy. Number 4 is healing emotional wounds. Number 5, biological dentistry. Number 6 is specific herbs, supplements, and vitamins. And then number 7, true prevention. Now, over the next few days, we will be covering all of these 7 essentials. The last one that Dr. V mentioned was true prevention, and she also mentioned thermograms. We're about to hear from Dr. Martin Bales, whose father was a pioneer in the digital photography industry, and that's what a thermogram is, by the way. Mammogram is not necessarily the best way to detect breast cancer. There's other ways that are much better, that are superior, and one of them is thermography. You're going to demonstrate a thermographic machine for us today and talk about that.
I will. My father actually invented the first all-digital infrared camera in 1979. Wow. But it wasn't for anything with body or health. It was actually for our defense. It was used in missile detection back in Afghanistan.
So it was looking for heat?
It was looking for heat for missiles. It used to be you had to track the missiles going across the sky manually. Now in our warheads we have that does automatically. In the early 80s, a group of doctors approached my father and said, we've heard that the body obviously has circulation and we can diagnose a lot of diseases. by seeing where there's hot spots or where there's cold. And he said, okay, I'll make a medical version for you.
And he really,
And he
that is
did.
fascinating. But the first one was missile detection.
First was missile
Okay.
detection. Yeah, yeah. Basically, it can be used in any part of the body. Probably, as most people have heard, the breast thermography is the most popular. It's really limited as far as cancer to breast. Possibly some skin cancer because it is skin deep. It doesn't look like for liver or other organs, but it's a great way. It's completely painless. The ladies like it because there's no pancake smasher, as they say. There's no ionizing radiation, so it can be done as little or as often as one wants. It's just in a cooled room. But all cancers go through a process called neoangiogenesis, which is new blood vessel growth. Because the cancers grow faster than the healthy tissue around them, they have to have their own discrete blood supply after they're a couple years older. Well, it turns out that when most breast cancers, not all of them, there's a few that are fast growing, but most of them are actually quite slow growing. To become the size of a pea, it's between 8 and 10 years. So if we can catch them in year 1 or 2 when they're just getting that new blood vessel supply, well, the blood vessels are warm, and that's how the thermography is picking them up. Mammography is about 2/3 accurate at finding them when they're a pea size, so they're already 8 years old. So we're going more from a prevention standpoint. If we find something early on, we can change diet and lifestyle, perhaps do some of the therapies you've discussed here, as opposed to, okay, you've already had something for 8 years and you're already in this bucket. What can we do?
Thermography really seems to be a great way to early detect cancer, doesn't it? Now, Dr. V also mentioned essential number 1, which was let food be thy medicine. Do you remember in Mary Poppins the song, "A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down"? Is this an oxymoron?
If there's one food that women need to avoid if they're on a breast cancer healing journey is sugar, because we know that sugar feeds cancer. Cancer cells have more insulin receptor sites than a healthy cell. So the first cells that get fed with sugar is the cancer cells.
Cancer likes sugar, right? Even though the doctors don't tell you that, and that the doctors tell you, oh, you can just eat anything. Well, first of all, it's all over the world about how you treat illness. Whether it's a cancer, heart disease, you've got to get off sugar. Sugar is a poison for all of us.
So sugar, we talk about it's a big problem. Yes, it's a big problem. I mean, sugar is wonderful. Everybody likes sugar. I like sugar, but I choose not to thrive on sugar. See, sugar should have been in our fun foods, building blocks, fuel, and fun. Okay? Fun foods. Every now and then you have sugar. These patients are often in an immune compromised state to start with. Some of the treatments they are getting are taking their immunity down to almost nothing, and then they're throwing sugar in on top of that, which directly feeds the problem, but it also directly takes a whack at the immunity. It's a terrible cycle that people need to consider.
The key to overcoming cancer and getting your health back is in your gut and your immune system. And if you destroy your immune system, that's the very thing that you need to heal. So you may kill the cancer cells in your body with the chemo, because yes, it's going to kill those. It's going to kill everything. It's like dropping an A-bomb on your body and then expecting health to rebound. When really, when you know in a garden, when you fill it with pesticides, all you're going to get back is weeds. Right. So you need to rebuild your immune system and support your body in healing itself, because it knows how to do that.
So the key to healing is to quit poisoning ourselves with chemotherapy, quit intaking sugar, because the truth is that both chemo and sugar are oncogenic. They cause cancer, and if an oncologist tells you otherwise, they're lying to you. There are a lot of lies and misconceptions about bioidentical hormones. Have you heard that they cause cancer? Have you heard that they prevent cancer? I've heard both, but they both can't be true. Let's listen to Dr. Jonathan Wright explain. Bioidentical hormones, do they cause cancer?
Okay, let's see. Did your own hormones cause you cancer yet? No. Bioidentical hormones are no more dangerous and no more safe than a person's own hormones when they got hormones. And we got to admit that young women do get breast cancer in their 30s. Occasionally, it's not very often. So there is a little hazard. That's from her own hormones. It's estrogen-related cancer is from her own hormones. But funny thing, there's lots of research papers that say that's because she's not metabolizing her hormones properly.
Breast cancer myth number 1 is that women's hormones cause cancer. I mean, that's the biggest fallacy ever. First of all, if our hormones cause cancer, then every 20-year-old on the planet would have cancer. So it's not our hormones. it's what we're exposed to. You know, look at the xenoestrogens and the chemical estrogens in the environment, the chemicals, the pesticides, the herbicides, the metals in our teeth, the antiperspirants. Those metals are actually classified as metalloestrogens and mimic and stimulate estrogen production in the body. So that's one aspect. Secondly, if a woman has a problem metabolizing or breaking down her estrogens properly, then the more aggressive estrogens will circulate in the body. So there's a way to support that methylation process, which doctors don't even talk about.
Dr. V just mentioned xenoestrogens. What exactly was she talking about?
Because of our exposure to environmental and pharmaceutical estrogens, right, that has the effect of throwing more gasoline on the fire. So some of the pesticides, fungicides that we use, they have an estrogen effect, right? These are what we call xenoestrogens, xeno meaning foreign.
We're not designed to be ingesting or be exposed to molecules that aren't from nature. And so some of those we can't even excrete them, or some of those molecules that in food growing, commercial food growing, like the pesticides and the herbicides, they act like hormones. And so they're turning on hormone-like activities which are proliferative, which make cells grow. So this is one of the reasons we have so much breast cancer and prostate cancer, hormone-driven cancers. But people don't realize other cancers have estrogen receptors. Colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, and lung cancer also have estrogen receptors. And so pesticides and herbicides will grow those cancers as well. So you don't want that kind of signaling. Plastics also have this hormone-like effect.
So not only are breast cancer and prostate cancer driven by estrogen, but also colon, lung, and pancreatic cancer. Now, Dr. Nalini just mentioned plastic. What many people don't realize is that in almost every bottle of water in the plastic content, there's a chemical called BPA, that's bisphenol A, and it is a xenoestrogen. In other words, it's a foreign estrogen, and it's known to cause cancer. An interesting thing that I've seen during Breast Cancer Awareness Month specifically is bottles of water that have a pink ribbon on it. And in light of the fact that the plastic might be causing breast cancer, isn't that a little bit contradictory or ironic? Because xenoestrogens, like BPA in the plastic, they actually throw the hormone balance out of whack. What many people don't realize is that essential oils can balance the hormones.
So what are essential oils? Let's go back to the basics.
So an essential oil is a volatile organic compound, and one thing people need to recognize when it comes to an essential oil, there is no nutrition in it. There is no vitamin or mineral. It's a chemical that essentially God gave to the plant to protect the plant from outside threats, whether it's bacteria, viruses, fungus, or even vectors like flies, bees, whatever that might attack the plant. And so what it includes are organic compounds, not organic as we think, meaning organic having a carbon chain included in it. Organic compounds like terpenes, alcohols, ketones, esters, and you name it. It's basically chemicals. And so
from the plant.
From the plant. Okay. Natural chemicals from the plant. God inspired the writers of the Bible long ago when he said the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. And that's exactly what this is.
That's essential oils.
Exactly. There is no oil for one specific issue. What we have found, and this is pretty fascinating, is that let's use the Ayurvedic model, Indian folk medicine, for example. There's an abundance of lemons in India. So you'll find that the Indians use lemon essential oil for virtually everything. Detoxification, internally, externally, whether or not you're going to clean the counter or whether or not you want to clean your skin. They use essential oils, lemon, for everything from nausea to halitosis to diabetes, cancer. Well, when you go to Australia, they're using melaleuca and tea tree and eucalyptus. When you go to Oregon and Washington, you're using peppermint for everything. So it's important to realize that these oils, a lot of them do the same things. So when I report on research, it's limited because we've only done a limited amount of research, but as far as I know, there is no essential oil that does not have a cancer effect. I just recently read a report of over 130 research articles regarding essential oils. And what the researchers came about was what essential oils do is they actually prevent angiogenesis, which is the growth of veins and arteries. It stops metastatic growth. It actually prevents DNA repair, that's pretty key. that's really key because there was one study that compared sandalwood and frankincense, and it found that frankincense, again, triggered that apoptotic effect where the cancer cell died, but sandalwood killed cancer another way, went around the back end, in a sense, and flanked it by triggering the actual DNA to not being able to repair itself, so the cancer just died that way too.
Frankincense oil, if you look at the research today, it is probably the most powerful essential oil, if not the most powerful supplement, period, when it comes to natural cancer treatment, in my opinion.
What's in frankincense that makes it so good?
You know, frankincense is really high in a compound called boswellia, or boswellic acid. And it's highly anti-inflammatory. It's also a very powerful antioxidant. And there are studies, actually there's a study that came out of the UK pretty recently showing that frankincense oil is effective at shrinking tumors, is effective against ovarian cancer, colon cancer, and breast cancer. And so that boswellia and frankincense, very, very powerful compound at fighting and treating cancer. And one of the most incredible things about frankincense is that, you know, the essential oils themselves are very, very small molecular compounds, and most everybody knows this in cancer treatment, that chemotherapy is not effective at treating any sort of cancer of the brain because it can't pass through the blood-brain barrier, versus frankincense oil, those compounds are so small they can actually pass through the blood-brain barrier and start to reduce that neural inflammation. And so I'll tell you an incredible story. I was speaking recently and had somebody come up to me at the end after talking about essential oils, and she said, I can attest to what you're talking about with frankincense oil. She said, my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor 6 years ago and was given 3 months to live. We got turned on to frankincense oil, started using it every single day. We diffused it in the home. We rubbed it on the roof of his mouth. She says it's been 6 years and he's still alive, and we really believe it's because of this use of frankincense oil. But yeah, you look in the medical studies, it's effective against Alzheimer's. It's effective against any sort of brain inflammation. And again, 4 separate studies showing that it's effective at treating cancer.
Allison Huish was diagnosed with brain cancer at the tender age of 13. And she used frankincense oil to treat it. Here's her amazing story.
I walked out of the waiting room about an hour later to see my mom, who had just hung up the phone with tears in her eyes. And she told me, she said, Allison, you have a brainstem tumor. And I didn't know quite what that meant. You know, I was 13 years old. I just started junior high school a couple weeks prior. But I knew at that moment that my life would be different from there on out. So we immediately went to go see my doctor, to my pediatric neurologist, and he showed my parents what the tumor was. Basically, it was a brainstem tumor, pilocytic astrocytoma is what it was, about the size of an egg, and it rested on my brainstem. So that next day, I was scheduled for emergency surgery, and they were able to get rid of about half my tumor. It was very interesting. My doctor told me, eat all the calories you can. If you'll eat pizza, if you'll eat ice cream, because I was very skinny, he's like, just get calories in you, whatever you'll take. But in our research, we learned how nutrition was so important. I needed to give my body good calories to help support good, healthy weight gain, support the cell so I would function better. And then we started doing research on what to do. And of course, many people were pushing us to go see our radiologist and go that direction. My mom and I, we did go meet with our radiologist, and I still to this day remember sitting in that room. The feelings that I felt in there. It was very cold. It was very cold. It was not what I wanted to do. And I actually left that appointment, and I grabbed my mom's hand, and I told my mom, Mom, this isn't this process for me. And so she said she had also felt the same way. But we left that radiologist appointment knowing we need something else. And that's where we were really drawn towards essential oils. They kept coming across in a lot of our research. We noticed how essential oils did incredible things. There's medical studies out there showing what essential oils can do. And in particular with essential oils, we were really drawn towards frankincense essential oil. I love frankincense oil. It's a very powerful oil. I think there's a reason why it's called liquid gold, or why it's one of the oils that the Christ child was given. It's a very, very precious oil.
So in the Bible, the wise men that gave baby Jesus the frankincense and the myrrh, you know, maybe they weren't giving him just, you know, precious gifts, they were giving him medicine.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You know, when you hear the story of the 3 wise men bringing the infant Jesus gold, frankincense, and myrrh, I remember years and years ago, not really knowing. I mean, everyone knows what gold is. Most people don't realize what frankincense and myrrh are, but those were the two main sources of medicine during that day. And frankincense actually at the birth of Jesus would have been used, because you look at children right after they're born, oftentimes there's bruising, and sometimes it's a dramatic experience, and so they would have actually rubbed frankincense oil on a child, which actually helps bring down that inflammation and swelling. Also, it's great for supporting and protecting the immune system. So if he was exposed to different types of pathogens at that time, frankincense oil really protects the body. And so absolutely, Ty, I mean, frankincense oil was used as, it was more than just a sweet smelling fragrance. It was, it was the, biblically based medicine. Frankincense was used along with something called the holy anointing oil, which was actually had myrrh essential oil. So a lot of people, when they hear frankincense, also start thinking about myrrh. And myrrh is referenced over 160 times in the Bible. Myrrh was also, actually there's a study in the Journal of Food and Chemistry and Toxicology recently that found that myrrh, another essential oil that's referenced in the Bible, is also effective at treating cancer.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, because that was my next question. What about myrrh? Because you have the frankincense and the myrrh.
Right.
So both were medicines. Yeah. Both were sweet-smelling fragrances. And here's something interesting that Dr. Sunil Pai told us last year.
From what we're looking at historically, the gold may be referenced as turmeric. Turmeric, or curcumin, specifically the part of the turmeric, but turmeric was sold and cost more than gold at the time. This is during the spice trade, or the trade route.
Sure.
And it was always nicknamed the golden spice.
You could absolutely see that in that area in the Middle East, and turmeric today in cancer treatment. Talk about a powerful compound, frankincense, myrrh, and turmeric.
You got a triple play there.
Oh yeah. So, but you look at something like myrrh, and it's powerful because it really works on the hypothalamus in the liver.
Okay.
And so it reduces liver inflammation and also balances hormones. And what happens a lot of times today, a lot of these cancers are estrogen-based cancers. Okay. And so what myrrh can do is it really supports the body, very similar, if people have heard of indole-3-carbon, or the benefits of cruciferous vegetables.
Broccoli.
It works in a very similar but an even more potent way, to where it really helps clear the body of excess estrogen, or xenoestrogens that are found in things like soy and plastics and parabens today, and really helps detoxify the liver, and also boost a very important antioxidant called glutathione, which supports detoxification.
Wow.
So that's the way that myrrh essential oil actually helps in fighting cancer.
Okay.
One of the things that I've had my patients do, including my mom over time, is start creating an at-home frankincense and myrrh body butter and body lotion. And so basically she takes 10 drops of frankincense, 10 drops of myrrh, along with some coconut oil and shea butter, and makes her own at-home body lotion, rubs her entire body with that. And really those oils, the great thing about essential oils is those they've been used as aromatherapy. So those small compounds coming off the body are protecting the body. They're fighting cancer. They're doing some incredible things there, even topically. So all of my patients, or as I mentioned, my mom, take those essential oils and especially put it around that area of the neck. When you put on the neck and the back of the head, you're constantly also breathing in those beneficial compounds.
So you're not only absorbing it through your skin, you're breathing it in as well.
Absolutely, and that's a good point. Your skin is your body's largest organ, and this is why, this is the amazing thing about essential oils. We've talked about frankincense and myrrh. Other essential oils as well, like lavender and sandalwood, are so incredible at fighting cancer. But so many of these products people are using today, the body lotions, makeups, moisturizers, shampoos, conditioners, they are loaded with carcinogens. They're loaded with parabens and phthalates and sodium lauryl sulfate and all of these different chemicals that cause cancer, versus if people make their own at-home personal care products with essential oils, rather than causing cancer, they're fighting cancer.
So I use a lot of oils. I use a lot of frankincense oil. I also use clove oil.
How did you take it? Did you ingest it, or did you rub it on your skin?
Yeah.
Or did you do the aromatherapy? How did you do that?
It was really interesting how we did it. So I did do it back here where my scar is, but I don't know how effective that was, because you do have a very thick skull. But one way that I did, and this was probably the way that was most consistent, is I always put a drop of frankincense oil on my tongue and raise the tongue to the roof of my mouth. And I did that probably about every 2 hours, because I figured, hey, that's probably the closest way I can get to my brain stem without interfering with bones or things like that.
And a lot of blood vessels there too to absorb.
A lot of blood vessels, so just a lot internal. And what happened was actually quite incredible. So I started to gain health pretty quickly. Like I said, I started junior high school and then I was diagnosed 3 weeks later. So I came home and started to regain health after my surgery. I was able to start school again with my peers the next semester. And that was pretty incredible.
That's quick for a brain tumor.
You know what, it was interesting. I was only in the hospital for about a week and a half. Most people are in there for about 6 weeks. But once I had my tumor, we started on good nutrition, we started on oils, and I just had an amazing recovery. And that took about 3 years.
Okay.
Took about 3 years, I would go see him. But every time I'd go see him, it just slowly was improving. It wasn't dramatic overnight. It was a slow, gradual process, but it took about 3 years. And I remember the point where I went to go see my neurologist, and he told me, "You have no more tumor."
Really?
It's completely disintegrated.
Wow. What did you feel like at that point?
You know what? Words can't describe. It was just like such an emotional relief. You know, I had been praying and I wanted my tumor to go away. And I was like, you know, I need another chance at life. And so when those words were said, it was invigorating. It was like I had a new life again. You know, I wanted to go to college. I wanted to become a registered dietitian. I wanted to tell people my story. And when I was told those words, it was like, this happened.
And that was at the age of 16 then?
That was about, the age of 16,
Okay.
17 is when that happened.
Okay.
So ever since then, my health has just been improving.
Wow, what an inspiring story from Allison, how she healed her brain cancer with essential oils. Another inspiring story is from Dr. Josh Axe, who actually healed his own mother's cancer using essential oils.
You know, my mom's actually battled cancer twice, and the first time a little over 20 years ago. And it actually came to a shock as our family. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer at 42. And growing up, my mom was my gym teacher at school. She was a swim instructor. So always really fit, active, and healthy, but yet diagnosed with cancer. And my family lived in what I call the medical model at the time. And you know, we were always taking drugs. My mom was always taking some sort of medication, but she went and had a mastectomy. She went through rounds and rounds and rounds of chemotherapy. And Ty, I can still remember this day, seeing my mom's hair fall out. I remember looking at her after the chemo treatments and thinking she had aged 20 years in 2 weeks, and just saying to myself, you know, I never want to see anyone have to go through that again. And that's really what drove me into being a physician, is seeing how sick she was. And so she was diagnosed as being cancer-free and healthy, but really for the next 10 years after she went through chemotherapy, she was really sicker than ever. She spent half of her days in bed, even after, I remember she'd get home from work at 3:30 and sleep till 6 every night. She struggled with depression, she struggled with chronic fatigue, anxiety issues, and leaky gut, digestive issues, just sick all the time. And 10 years later, I was actually working as a nutritionist in Orlando and finishing up my doctorate, and she called and said, "Hey, I've been diagnosed with cancer again. What do I do?" And I flew home from Florida to Ohio, and we sat down and prayed together, and I just said, "Mom, I think we need to take care of you all naturally." And so we started an all-natural treatment program, and she started juicing vegetables every single day. We had her start doing antioxidant-rich foods, loads of probiotics, and using things like essential oils, in helping her body heal. We followed this treatment protocol for about 4 months, went back to the oncologist, and their first recommendation was surgery and radiation immediately. And we followed it for 4 months. After 4 months, went back to the oncologist, got a CT scan, called us 2 days later. He said, "This is incredible. We don't see this." He said, "But the tumors have shrunk more than half."
Wow.
He said, "I keep doing
whatever you're doing, it's working, right?
Yeah, he said, "Come back in 9 months." We went back 9 months later, and complete remission. And today my mom is in the best shape of her life. In fact, her and my dad just retired from Ohio down to Florida, and she water skis every day. She's ran 3 5Ks with me in the past few years and gotten second, third in her age group.
Wow.
And she says she actually feels better now in her 60s than she did when she was in her 30s. And so she actually now teaches people how to use essential oils and make healing smoothies and juicing vegetables and how to ferment their own food. And so she just is a walking testimony of really what it takes to beat and fight cancer naturally.
Right, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, hey, thanks a lot.
Cool.
Wow, it's truly amazing the medicine that we find in nature, isn't it? From essential oils to seeds to nuts to herbs to eggplant?
Okay, BEC5 is a compound derived originally from an Australian plant called devil's apple. And it also is found in eggplant, and it's found in green pepper.
Eggplant?
It's found, yes. It's one of the things called Solanaceae, for those of you who are botanists. They all have some of this BEC5 in them. Now, the technical term for them is solacidine glycosides. And all the glycoside means is there's a sugar attached to something. It could be a string of sugars, too. All right, it was discovered by Dr. William Cham. He likes to go by Bill, so we all call him Bill. He's a PhD. He is a brilliant guy, and he was working at a university in Australia. And someone came out to talk to him. Even though his major field is lipid chemistry, they want to talk to him because they heard he was interested about why did their livestock, when they developed cancer in the eyeball, there's a certain kind of livestock that developed a lot of that, they go rub themselves up against the devil's apple plant with their eyes, and damn, their cancer would go away. And so they talked to Dr. Cham about that, and Dr. Cham was intrigued. So he went to research it, and he isolated these things called solacidine glycosides. There are 2 or 3 of them, but they're all lumped under the name BEC5. BEC5 is Bill Edward Cham. That's his name.
Oh, okay.
-5. Okay. So here's what Dr. Cham found very, very quickly. What he found is that there is a membrane change in the membrane that surrounds a cancer cell. And it's any cancer cell. And as you'll hear later on from Dr. Gaston, it's every cancer cell has this membrane change. But normal cells that are not cancerous do not have that membrane change. And the key thing is that the solacidine glycoside, this sugar that sticks down, has a particular type of plant sugar that connects with a cancer cell's changed membrane, and it connects, and the cancer cell pulls that stuff inside the cancer cell where it doesn't mess with the DNA of the cancer cell. It goes to little baggies called lysosomes, which are filled with enzymes, and they're the storage depot for enzymes that the cell uses. But this stuff, the BEC5, goes into the cancer cell, it goes to the lysosomes somehow, it enters the lysosomes, and all the storage membranes are ruptured. And so this cell is flooded with digestive enzymes, and it digests itself to death. Seriously. Now, if I have a skin cancer right here, and I put it on there, it is not going to hurt the normal skin at all. That is the key thing. This is a beautifully targeted thing.
So far, it has been shown in all the animal studies and all the cell line studies that have been done, has shown that it has a very broad spectrum.
So it works on lots of different cancers?
So far, the evidence is showing up that it works on a very broad variety of cancers. In sarcomas, in adenocarcinomas, in squamous cell, basal cell. So BEC5 went through a very interesting development phase with using it on skin cancers. And actually, it's still being used on skin cancer. This is a cream that's over the counter.
Yeah.
In those jurisdictions where it's legal, it can be bought over the counter. And you apply the cream, and it starts killing layer by layer the cancer cells of the skin cancer. You know, skin cancer is the most common cancer. And it just eliminates the cancer.
But just the cancer?
It only targets at the beginning it's very impressive because the characteristic with these early cancers is that the cancer cells are quite a bit more spread than what it's evident. Okay. So you start applying it and suddenly redness starts spreading out and there's a lot of reaction. There's a little bit of an open wound in the first week or 2. That's a lot bigger and scary because it's bigger than what you thought it was. And after the second, third week, then you start seeing normal skin coming in, and covering it up. And the majority of times, there's not even a scar left. And what I've seen is it works consistently every time.
What happened to it? Well, Dr. Cham was in Australia, and by the time the Australasian Society of Dermatologists complained to the Therapeutic Goods Administration, which is the same as the FDA down under, they had documented 70,000 people cured their own skin cancers with his stuff. And he was selling it over the counter. Can you imagine a cancer cure being sold over the counter and 70,000 people cured themselves?
We can't have that.
We cannot have that, even if we're in Australia. So, there's a complaint for the Australasian Society of Dermatologists to the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Put this stuff on prescription. Only doctors should treat. So the Therapeutic Goods Administration put it on prescription. There goes Dr. Cham's over-the-counter business. Oh, guess what? Hardly any of the dermatologists who prescribed the stuff. They couldn't get it anymore.
This BEC5 compound, which is selectively toxic to cancer cells, is contained in the devil's apple, which grows freely all over Australia. While we're on the subject of Australia, let's have a listen to Dr. Manuela Boyle as she shares some of her treatment protocols, and we're also going to hear from an Australian cancer survivor.
I've been in practice for almost 20 years. I'm originally from Milan, from Italy. I worked for a number of years in London, a very big clinic in London. I used to see over there also cancer patients. I worked in Singapore as well, so over there same thing. And in Australia, cancer is very much an international issue. There are some differences in perhaps obviously cultural backgrounds, beliefs and diets, but at the end of the day, the patient who is undergoing chemotherapy at the local hospital here on the Gold Coast will be receiving exactly the same type of drug that a patient in Sri Lanka right now with breast cancer will be receiving, and the person in America will be receiving, or in South Africa will be receiving. Which means that basically the conventional treatment is still one size fits all. In terms of integrative approach, we know that this is obviously a very significant shortcomings. One size doesn't fit all at all. We have the opportunity to use botanical agents and nutritional supplementation that is designed for each and every individual. We have, there are 220 different cancers that have been identified. And those 220 different cancers are, again, different for each and every person. So individualized treatment is absolutely essential. My team and I have the ability to use cutting-edge, technical, amazing machines. We have an hyperthermia machine, hypothermia chamber. We have IV vitamin C, glutathione, alpha-lipoic acids. We have dendritic vaccine injections. All this is absolutely evidence-based. It is supported by human clinical trials, and it is very successful. And each and every time, it's modified and tweaked according to the presentation of each patient. So it's, I'm very happy to be able to use all this knowledge and to help people, absolutely.
After multiple attempts, then they put I swallowed a pill that had a camera in it, and that found it. And I had a gastrointestinal stromal tumour. So as soon as they found that, in a couple of days I was, they did another endoscopy to try and get to it, to see more about it, but it had to go down a long way, so it was a difficult one. A couple of days later I was in surgery and they took out a foot of my small intestine, and it was a gastrointestinal stromal tumour, and it was got at 10 centimetres, so it was very lucky that it bled. If it hadn't have bled and it had got much bigger, I probably wouldn't have survived. So I took it out, and I was put on a chemotherapy called Gleevec. Here, I think in America it's called Gleevec. That was hard. It just knocked the energy out of me. It was difficult. Stayed on it for a year, and I think that something about that affected me. I got a second tumour sometime later. It's probably a few years. I can't remember exactly, probably 2 years later. And that was in my neck. And it grew very rapidly. So And I decided that I wanted to approach this not just medically. So once I got the diagnosis for that, I then had to think about it. Treatment would have been chemo and radiation. But I just didn't want it all coming back again. So I knew that if I just did straight medical stuff, it was not necessarily, this is the second time around. So I then had the treatment that was involved, but I went and approached Manuela, and Manuela put me on a regime of things that during the treatment, because I got Western medical treatment, but I also got Manuela's treatment, and I did so there were a whole lot of people that I knew that were diagnosed at the same time, and I watched us all go through, and the difference in me and the other people was amazing. I just coped with the treatment so much better. Less nausea. I didn't need to be fed by a tube, which nearly all of them did that were going through at the same time. And you could see just by looking at me that I was coping much better than the others. It was still not a lot of fun. It was difficult to go through. But I did cope much better. I had much less of the burns from the radiation on my neck than the other people. And once the treatment stopped, I just started picking up very, very quickly, and within 6 weeks I could go back to work. So, because we were cycled in going back to the doctors at the same time at the hospital, I saw a number of the others, and many of them 4 and 5 months later still not back at work. They were still not in a great shape. So what Manuela did for me made a huge difference. The herbs and the nutrients and the diet that I was on just made a huge difference in my recovery. How can I repay her, and how can I say enough about these things? It's I think she knows how much it has meant to me. I have a quality of life now that is great, and life ongoing. And now, 3.5 years on, back to full strength. And I've been back to full strength for quite a while. Just amazing, really, really good. Feels good. And I feel confident that it's not coming back. So I'm here to stay.
During this episode, you've come to know about the true cancer facts and fictions. I'm so glad we could make it clear for you. You've learned how cancer spreads and how the immune system is the answer to stopping cancer in its tracks. You've seen the alarming data on the hidden dangers of mammograms, which, like chemotherapy, actually helps to spread cancer, the exact thing that it is supposed to diagnose and prevent. You've also seen the propensity of mammograms to lead to overdiagnosis. All these facts leading to the conclusion that there simply must be a better way. You've seen how thermography can actually diagnose breast cancer when it's as small as a pinhead, and how a life-threatening bout with cancer can be won before it even begins. The same goes for skin cancer. We've given you the most effective ways to prevent and beat skin cancer so you can make sure that your skin not only looks healthy, but it is healthy. And as we will keep reiterating, nature itself will continue to give us answers as we tap into the amazing gift we've been given that surrounds us every day. You've heard the stories of how essential oils have helped to prevent and heal cancer, like Allison and Dr. Axe's mother, and how these people will attest that their lives are indebted to the gifts given in nature. I trust that this has been not only informative but encouraging to you, as you can clearly see that the answers are simple and that there is a clear path to having a life free from cancer. Wow, we covered a lot of information in this episode, didn't we? I'm glad you joined us, and I hope you'll make plans to join us for the next episode, because tomorrow we're going to travel across the Atlantic Ocean to a little country called Latvia. We're going to learn about a virus that targets cancer cells and has been used in over 10,000 patients to completely eradicate cancer from the body with no known side effects. You're not going to want to miss the next episode. So thanks for tuning in to this one. Make plans to join us tomorrow, and in the meantime, God bless all of you.
Well, I'm living proof, and thousands of women around the globe, and hundreds of thousands of people who've healed cancer in general. We know there is a cure. The cure lies in our food, in detoxifying our body properly, balancing our energy, in dealing with our stress and our emotional wounds, making sure that we don't have dental toxicities, using food and plants to repair our body, and then staying on top of everything, making sure that you can prevent cancer in the future. Because traditional medicine will use certain markers, but they're very, very gross and very ineffective markers. But there are markers like the PHI enzyme or the cancer profile or the Oncoblot test that can determine cancer when it's only a few million cells in the body instead of a tumor, because it takes 5 to 8 years for a tumor to develop. Thermography is also a great tool to be able to access the physiological changes that's going on in the body. So yes, there is a cure, and yes, you can prevent it.
I think the work you're doing is extraordinary.
Well, thank you.
Extraordinary, and I think it's extraordinary because you're nailing, let me see if I get the expression in English correctly, the nail in the head. Okay, I think no, you're
hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail in the head, because the core of what you're doing is empowerment. And you are gathering up the information and you're bringing it forward. And that process of empowerment is really the key to health. And that is the piece that's missing. Eventually, medicine will come to terms, humanity will come to terms with the fact that healing comes from within. And that us, the doctors and the clinics and the medications, are the ones that facilitate that process of healing. So it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to you as a patient. And my true role as a practitioner is to empower and facilitate that healing within.
Daniel?
Hi.
What's your last name, Daniel?
My name is Daniel Wise.
Daniel Wise. We're here in Atlanta. It's really a pleasure to meet you today. This is frankincense oil. What you want to do is you want to put a drop on your tongue.
Let's do that now.
Every 2 hours. And then you see how you feel after a couple weeks.
You know what I want y'all to do to show you how much belief I got in y'all? I want you to put a tab on your finger and put it right on my lip, on my tongue, brother. This is how much I'm believing and happy to see y'all guys. Look, I don't know if his hand filthy or not. There's more help than the government gives me. That's more pure medication than the system gives us.
What we just gave you is a little bottle of frankincense oil. You got it in your backpack here.
I will keep it.
You keep it, you use it. You're a stage 4 cancer patient with stage 4 lung cancer, right?
Right.
And you're going to use that every 2 hours on your tongue. And I'm going to give you a number that you can get in touch with me. And I want to touch base with you in a couple months and see how you're doing.
Okay, that will
All right?
Good. That will be awesome. Look at this man's neck. Look at his neck. And look at my neck. That's all I want. Is that me asking for too much? Just to not be in pain all day? These boys about to make me cry. I'm punking out like a girl. Lord, please put an extra angel of protection around these guys, Lord. Let no hurt, harm, or danger come upon them. Let them be a blessing to someone else, Lord, as you sent them out for me today. I know they're looking at me like I'm a little deranged, and I am. And God made me like this, and He wants y'all to be bold. I've been suicidal this morning. Almost did it. But I knew I would be a punk, because I ain't toughing this thing out.
But there's always hope, and that's the message we give you today, Daniel. There is hope. And that little bottle of oil in your backpack,
that big bottle of oil.
Big bottle of oil, you wait and see what it does, because I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised, brother.
Thank you for your time, brother.
Yeah, we love you. When you choose to own the Truth About Cancer, a global quest, you play a huge role in saving millions of men, women, and children that are suffering and dying from cancer, a terribly misunderstood and mistreated disease. Your support allows us to continue on our life's mission to eradicate cancer once and for all. Our mission is not only to help you and your family by arming you with the truth, but it's to share the truth with as many people as we can across the globe each and every day. Please consider joining this movement and supporting the mission by choosing to own this docuseries and by sharing it with your family, your friends, your community, and your church. Together, we can make a difference and we will save lives. Plus, a portion of each and every sale gets donated to cancer charities that are doing real cancer research and are actually helping cancer patients each and every day. Simply click the banners below to join the movement and support our mission. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.